So I'm Pratishtha. I go to U of T and I'm in my third year studying psychology and criminology. I'm a part of their college system in Woodward College, and I started in 2012 as an international student. So I've come from a lot of different countries. I was born in India, but I grew up in Malaysia, the Philippines, and I went to high school in Hong Kong before coming to Canada. So I have lived a very international life. And that's really allowed me to see a lot of different cultures, which makes it easier when you come to Canada because it is a very multicultural and diverse country, and Toronto especially. So transitioning that way wasn't too difficult. One of the biggest barriers that I found was that I'd basically grown up in this British system my whole life, and when I came here and I spoke to people, sometimes they just generally would not understand what I was saying. So for example, whenever we're leaving a room, we'd be like, hey, let's make a move. And I went out with this one guy and he was basically like, you want to do what? And I was like, no, I mean, like, I generally want to leave. But apart from that, it's been a very positive experience, and I work at the Center for International Experience, so I deal with a lot of international students on a daily basis, as well as students who want to go on exchange, and everyone's just very welcoming that way, and it's just really easy to get in touch with everybody that way. So I'm generally a very outgoing person, so it's easy for me to make friends, and I made sure that I had at least a couple of people who I was closer with, so I tend to generally have a big circle of acquaintances, because you just see people in classes and all that, but obviously you can't sit down and really have a conversation with them. So one thing I did is that I made a couple of friends who were generally just really easy to talk to, and who I could explain like what I was going through and what they were going through. And so there was a good back and forth over there. Another thing that I did, which I hadn't done in my first year at U of T, which I'm really glad I'm doing now, is that I got a lot more involved in activities outside my culture. So when I first came to U of T, I was very much like, oh, let me find all the Indian societies and be a part of them. But now I'm genuinely part of things that I'm interested in myself, and it matters a lot less that I'm doing them, like I might not be doing them with friends, but the fact that I'm doing them for myself makes me feel a lot more sane, because I just take out this time to meet people that I know and to take part in activities that I'm interested in, and that keeps me occupied and busy. And especially in the winter when it's just really cold and you just don't want to go outside and you hardly see anyone and everyone's wearing black, it's just really nice being able to do something and look forward to doing that thing. So that's what keeps me mentally healthy. So for me, one of the biggest things that I think is lacking is cultural sensitivity on campus, and providing students with a culturally and linguistically diverse system where you can get all this mental health support, and you can get it in the language you're most comfortable with. You get it from, it doesn't even have to be like a professional, it can even be your peers or someone who's trained in mental health support, who's giving you this, who's from a similar background to you. So they basically provide you with the support that you need, and you can talk to them without having to kind of explain your cultural context, because the other person just, they've come from a similar background, they understand what's going on. And that's one thing that's very lacking at U of T. Like, I'm a psych major, I've studied all these like culture-bound syndromes and cultural disorders and everything, and the thing is that students don't, like, a lot of students won't have culture-bound syndromes or disorders. They have, like, they'll have depression, they'll have anxiety, they'll have all these issues that everyone all around the world has. They just come from a different cultural background, so their way of expressing it to their parents, their way of expressing it to their friends, or just dealing it with themselves is a lot more different than it might be over here. So I think it's really, really important that that's taken into account. I also think that one thing that should be taken into account is in your classes, because we can register for accessibility services, and U of T has a really good accessibility services program. But one of the issues with that is that you're just dealing with your accessibility services counselor and you're dealing with your professor. So your TA won't know what's going on, your just general support staff won't know what's going on, your registrar won't know what's going on unless and until you decide to tell them. So I think it's really important that you should be able to email your TA and say, I completely understand that this essay is due at this time and the professor's not replying to me, so is it all right if I write this in this way or if I give it in at this time? And your TA should be equipped in handling that as well as the administrative services, because I once had an experience where I have genuine issues writing multiple choice papers, and especially in psychology, in the lower year subjects, all of our exams are multiple choice. And so I emailed my professor, and she's a psych professor, and I was like, hey, I'm having this trouble writing this, and I get anxiety and I get panic attacks when I'm writing all these papers. Is there any alternative? Like, can I do something else? Can I write this paper differently? And she was just like, oh, don't worry about it. You didn't do that terribly on your midterm. So what I'll do is that I'll weigh that grade towards your final, and if you do well on your final, I'll push your entire grade up. And I was just like, yeah, but the final's a multiple choice paper. Like, how is that going to help me? She's like, oh, there's nothing else I can do. So I really think it's important that that gets made better, particularly when a student is of an international background and might not have English as their first language, or may have just like issues with English. It gets a little difficult to communicate what the exact problem is. So I feel like that training is really necessary, and that'll make it a lot better for international students. I would want everyone to know that everybody has mental health, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. And particularly when it comes to international students from different backgrounds, you have to understand that everyone is comfortable to a different degree expressing that mental health, and it doesn't mean that those issues might not be there. And I think it's just important to be patient and understand that like a person will come to you when they can, and it's all right to talk about it.